So this is the official last night of our winter retreat 2023. And we'll be doing a ceremony called Asking for Forgiveness to Lumpur Pasano, our senior guiding elder here at the monastery. It's a kind of a reflection practice ceremony that we do at different times of the year for different occasions. And oftentimes when people are leaving a monastery for a significant period of time, they will do the same asking for forgiveness reflection. And it's a very important reflection if one uses it other than just as a rite or a ritual or a ceremony, but really taking it to heart and bringing it in. Because probably almost on a daily basis, it seems like sometimes, we are either doing something to offend somebody else, or somebody else is doing something to offend us, or we take exception to things, or aren't skillful in some way, and have regrets oftentimes. And one of the best things that we can learn is how not to carry things around for a long period of time, and how to recollect, remember, use some reflection to see what's been skillful, what's unskillful, and to ask for forgiveness from other people and forgive ourselves and let things pass, move on. So asking for forgiveness ceremony kind of highlights this and brings it to mind, the importance of that and how not to cling to memories and perceptions. So we'll be doing that in a little bit as a way of wrapping up this year's winter retreat. And it's very powerful. I've been reading, just started reading a biography of Ruth Denison, and just sort of in the first parts of it now, but the author, the biographer, is recounting some of Ruth's early days before she became a Dhamma practitioner. And she was a young woman in World War II Germany, German descent, and was present for all the different aspects of those numbers of years, 6 years, I guess, from the beginning to the end of the war in the early 40s. And was a bit isolated or inured from some of the things that were happening in the early days, or the early years, up until the last year or two of the war. Was able to, she didn't get involved too much in all the politics and the atrocities that were happening. She was able to kind of avoid those. But as the war was coming to a close and the occupying forces were moving in, she was basically losing everything in her life and suffered a lot. She had to flee and essentially was on the move, on the road, homeless, and scrounging for subsistence, living for over a year, I believe, until things kind of finally settled down. And just suffered a lot of tremendous difficulties and abuse, rape, very serious various serious things. And she's recounting all of this at this point to the biographer. But the biographer is also reflecting on all the years of since then that have that she, the biographer, had been practicing with Ruth, and how Ruth rarely referred to these times, these incidents. She didn't dwell on them. She didn't make much mention of them. She was, readily talking about them with the author, as the author was doing her interviews with Ruth, and she wasn't mincing any words or pretending anything, horrible didn't happen, and would go into detail. But it just became real clear that she didn't make that the central part of her life, memories of the past, memories of all of these abuses and difficulties. And that her basic MO was, it's not worth going there, it's not worth revisiting, it's not worth rehashing, you can't change the past. You don't deny any of it and the effect that it has and has had, but you just don't, there's no use at all in just going back and letting it control your life, letting those memories control your life. So she was always very strong in that way. And I don't know what level of forgiveness was involved. That word hasn't been used so far in what I'm reading, but I can imagine that that's what the results of actively working on forgiveness comes to be. It's that sense of not denying, not repressing, but not dwelling, not cogitating, not regurgitating for no good reason. And the strength that takes, because the mind tends to go over things like this over and over and over again if it has a strong impact. So, it's a very beautiful lesson to learn. Very hard one, but how to let go and how to move on and not be devastated for the rest of one's life. Because in reality, the human world, human life is a mixed bag, 50-50. Some really good things, some really awful things, and a whole lot of stuff in between that's sort of generally mildly positive or mildly negative, and some fairly neutral. And we just can't avoid that kind of 50-50 aspect of living in the human realm. And that, most of the suffering that we create for ourselves is like what the reading that Ajahn Lumpha Pasana was doing last night from Ajahn Chah, in terms of suppositions, supposing things into existence, creating a reality of constructions of the constructed realm, the conventions that we create around just about everything that we experience, and how it's those constructions and conventions, those suppositions into being, into existence, that create our world of experience, and how the ultimate goal is to just stop doing that, stop creating this realm of constructed reality, of conventional reality, and that's what leads us to the unconditioned. But yet, we keep doing it out of habit, force of habit, very strong conditioning, as a way of experiencing less suffering, or that's the attempt anyway, by creating these constructed realities. So the task is, to understand that process, to see it happening, and to learn how to stop doing it. A lot of that comes through the use of seeing the nature of how like the sankhara aspect of it, volitional creations, how the results that come from that, the perceptual realm, the patterns that we all start to view our world through, those constructed patterns and the feelings that come along with them. And then the reactions to those patterns that reinforce the same programs that created them in the first place. So it's this constant cycle of action, result, reaction, another result, another reaction, another result. This proliferative tendency that reinforces this whole realm of how we experience the world, how we construct the world. So it's learning to understand that. And lift our attention to something that's more skillful, more how she attended to them or didn't attend to them, and how she to live in a way experience to dwell on. Another phrase, more on a mundane level, but I think it applies to all aspects of our experience, is that someone or things like that very much in the world, issues and things like that. There is no end. Practitioner as on Dhamma, on things that point to a conclusion, an ending. Which takes the pull of believing in perceptions, believing in the memories that come up from the past, even the memories of something that's just, say recently happening, some comments or conversations with people that have been difficult or challenging, and what we create them into and hold on to, the process of these perceptions and experiencing these perceptions over and over again. I like the phrase regarding them or hoping to see them, eventually seeing them as paper tigers. And how many times do we have a perception, a memory, sanya, that we believe in and that we invest in and that we, categorize people or events in some way or another and hold on to them as reality, only to find out that, sometime later, it all changes, the perception changes, our experience of that event or of that person morphs, changes, melts away, and its reality as a tiger just dissolves like paper, like a paper tiger. Where did it go? What was it all about? Just was a construction in the mind. How many times of our worries, our fears, our concerns turned out not to be valid. And to really reflect on that and look back and say, well, where did that go? What happened to that reality? And then, the other side, the creation of it, the creation of people and opinions events to kind of justify our underlying tendencies towards fear, anxiety, anger, whatever. Yeah, it's like there's another phrase called creating straw men. These are like diversionary tactics that the mind will create, the Mara, the defiled mind will create. The defilements themselves actually create these straw men that are kind of substitutes for reality. They're not the real thing. They're just, again, they're constructs that we create. It's kind of a distortion of what a reality is. And they don't hold up either. They're just made of straw. They're fake. They're not the real thing. So we live in this constantly revolving world of creating straw men and then living according to our perceptions of paper tigers over and over and over again. And to see how ephemeral they are, how changeable they are. And when we do that, that's when we can really move into letting go and forgiveness. If we can honestly see how all the events that we took so seriously, and I'm talking about milder events than probably what, say, Ruth experienced, but just say even in the course of a 3-month winter retreat, the different challenges and difficulties, and hopefully some successes and some insights, but to see, that thing that happened in January, or that experience, or that interaction, that event, that person, that memory. Well, what happened to that in the next couple of months? Where did it go? What's it like? What's it like now? So, like the winter retreat's been a real good opportunity to be able to slow down and be able to look at this kind of stuff. Hopefully there were some beautiful moments that you can take from and learn from as well. But if not, it's all good in the end, in a sense, if we use it with the proper perspective. And then just the difficulties, the slights, the problems, to work on forgiving, and really doing that deeply. It's our way of moving on, letting the past be in the past. And we all experience, I was just thinking just in the past couple of days, watching my own mind, and the past 3 months, as we all know, Ajahn Chunda's been working very diligently, very hard on getting together plans for building 3 or 5, maybe, if we're lucky, new kutis. It's been a lot of work with a lot of learning and different agencies involved, building and planning and environmental health, all the agencies in Utaya, and then kind of thinking that, we were home free. I've been helping a little bit on the side, just attending, adding a few comments here and there. Ajahn Chunda's been doing the bulk of the work with great diligence, much better than I could have done. But anyway, just the other day, we thought that there was one particular government agency that we were going to be able to sidestep because of the nature of this project, which was going to be a relief, and then all of a sudden found out that we couldn't sidestep it. And so it kind of opened up a whole other can of worms for him to attend to, and it was a an agency that we've worked with before, and quite a few years ago, we had a real, pretty significant, impactful difficulty with one of the people at this particular place, and it was, it made quite an impression in my heart, in my mind, and it lasted it kind of drug on for a while, and then slowly petered out. And since then, we've had wonderful interactions with this particular agency as that other person moved on. But so the most recent experience has been quite positive. But then as soon as I heard that we weren't going to be able to sidestep that agency, all of that, it was incredible how quickly that sanya, that memory, popped back up, and I kind of immediately went into efficiency mode, defensive mode of making plans, making sure Ajahn Chunda understood the history, going through records, developing strategy, all those kinds of things. And just feeling kind of like, oh geez, having to go through all this again. And it was in the afternoon, later in the evening, as I was up at my kuti, and kind of it was still a bit reverberating, and I realized that I shouldn't just sit down and try and watch my breath. It was just too strong, and have luckily over the years developed some strategies to kind of deal with this kind of mind state when it comes up, and I think we all experience it in different ways. It's sort of like you get kind of charged up about something, and it's hard to just let it aside. And so, some of the strategies that I used that night really helped move it along very fast, much faster than in the past, and it's I owe that to the teachings. And there's lots of different strategies that we can all learn and develop to kind of drop unpleasant experiences that we're engaging in our heads. But some of the ones that worked that night and that worked for me in general are just doing some active reflections first, just to pose questions, asking skillful question asking, and kind of starting out with a reflection that is useful, of kind of along the lines of reducing expectations. Sort of like, well, what am I expecting? And oftentimes it's a perfection, an idea of perfection, that it shouldn't happen this way, that these people should be more like this, that if they only knew what we were really doing and how important it was, and that kind of stuff, then we wouldn't have to go through all of this, and expecting it all to work just the way it should work, and realizing that kind of expectation is fruitless, because the reality is that it isn't working that way, and it's my expectation that it should be working that way that's causing suffering. So to look at just reducing expectations to fit the reality, and watching the perfectionist strategy arise, and realizing that it's a fruitless endeavor. And so, letting that work its course, and then adding another reflection in general, I find very useful, of taking things to sort of, what's the worst case scenario? Not in a way that brings up anxiety, but in a way that brings one to a sense of reality. And using that in combination with that kind of reducing expectations. So, reducing or the worst case scenario being, okay, well, what happens if they say no? Then we don't build these kutis. That's it. We don't have 5 kutis that we thought we were going to have. And that fits in with the reflection that we do on the 4 requisites, which I think we just chanted maybe this morning or the other day, yesterday, I can't remember. Home for a night, house for a night. That's all I can expect. Lodging for a night. Food for one day. That's all I can expect. Medicine, the most basic form of medicine for illness. That's all I can expect. Clothing, just one set of robes to cover the body. That's it. So reducing our expectations, worst case scenario, would it be so awful? I'd still have lodging for a night and food for a day. And then, another kind of strategic contemplation in these kinds of situations is taking it straight to maranasati, contemplation of death, as a way of bringing oneself into the immediate present and saying, what's really important? Is it really important, for me to strategize about how to work with this particular agency? What if I were to die tonight? Would I want this to be this state of my mind as I take my last several breaths? No. Is it worth, getting twisted up about? No, not at all. If this is to be my last evening on this planet, how do I want to go out? So you can just even say 5 more breaths. Lie there in bed, 5 more breaths, and then that's it. Let go. You're at 5, and think, okay, thoughts of love and kindness. That's how I want to have some of those. Breathe in, breathe out. Got 4 left. Thoughts of letting go, thoughts of forgiveness. Breathe in, breathe out, let go. 3 more to go. Transiency, moving on, unknown, comfortable with that. 2 left, 1 left, and then poof, gone. So that's a very powerful kind of recollection to disentangle from the proliferative process. And the more you work with those kinds of contemplations, perceptions, faster one moves on from being fooled by these paper tigers. And from what we hear, the ultimate goal is just to, never pick them up to begin with. It's the cessation aspect of practice becomes the non-arising aspect of practice. There's a phrase from the Buddha's teachings, for however you conceive it, it's always other than that, which is a really profound statement on a number of different levels. The more conventional level being, what we create, how we view something or how we experience something or how we think something is going to turn out. The projections that we make are very often, usually, almost always, very different when they actualize. And then even more profoundly is, just the whole process of conceptualization and identification with the sense of me or mine or I, self. That's just a total fabrication. when compared to the actual raw experience, the actual way things are, as opposed to our conception of them. So reflecting on that is very useful as well. And while we're still in the realm of samsara, while we're still living in the realm of conditions, we can also use that fabrication process, that supposing things into reality, that construction, creation of conventions, to create skillful conventions, to create skillful constructions. Skillful ways of seeing the world, viewing the world. They are constructed. There are conventions, but they're ones that lead us into clarity and peace. And I think, just going back to the fact that this is the ending of a winter retreat, just realizing too that winter retreat is a constructed reality. It's a convention. We have this period of time from January 1st to March 31st. We define it. We conceive it in a sense. We construct it as a convention. We call this convention winter retreat. It happens so far for the past 25 years or so. It happens every January 1st to March 31st. It's the convention of winter retreat. At the beginning we have a certain ceremony. We make our plans for how to schedule it, and themes. That's a convention, and we have a closing ceremony, like we're going to be doing very soon, as part of the convention. And we wrap it all up, call it winter retreat. And as of tomorrow, we'll be entering a period where we're not on winter retreat. We call it a convention, the regular year, the regular way of operating, with its own set of conventions. So these are really skillful conventions, and we use them as tools. And they are conventions, supposed into reality, given a tag, a name. But the more we go through them, year after year after year, too, you see the rhythm, and the more you pull yourself into the present moment, the less we compartmentalize it. Certain ebbs and flows of energy and engagement throughout the year, winter retreat being a different one set, regular year being a different set. But really it's all just a flow of events, energy, and movement. And the task is to just stay centered and allow the experience to flow, see it for what it is, and let it go, let it pass. Let it become a memory, and use what we've learned as we move through the next bit, but always keeping that sense of presence in the present moment at the fore, and not getting lost in the perceptions, the sanya of the past. Sanya is what creates the past, or our idea of the past. Or getting involved in sankhara, projections, creations for the future. Sankhara is what creates the future. And we still live through all of these creations in the present moment, but if we can see them clearly, just for what they are, without imputing any additional conceivings, any additional meanings onto what's happening right here, right now, then that's our opportunity to realize the end of suffering. And a very important part of that, as I started with, is this act of forgiveness, letting the past be the past, and moving on. If there were any difficulties, problems, issues, hopefully, we learned something from them, how to skillfully deal with them in the future, and just move on to experiencing what's here in front of us, right here, right now. So these are just a few thoughts for the last evening of our winter retreat 2023, and we'll go ahead and do the asking for forgiveness ceremony and go from there.